Dead Man Walking, the most iconic lore in tornado history, while potentially the most chilling observed tornado phenomena.
Later on, the National Weather Service would investigate the area and note that, quote, one of the most striking signs in approaching this area was the distinct lack of debris of any size. Closer inspection showed lots of little debris, but no signs of large items. At least half a dozen cars were identified from the air lying in open areas, most of them flattened and encrusted with mud and grass. Later, a ground survey revealed that most of the debris that was left in the area was extremely small, indicating the power of the tornadic winds. The tornado essentially acted as a blender, a food processor if you will, and it ground up any matter in its path into small chunks, leaving virtually nothing behind. The F5 rated supercell tornado had wreaked havoc over Jarrell and the surrounding countryside. At its maximum size, it was 1.2 kilometers, or 3/4 mile wide, reaching wind speeds at gusts of 261 to 318 miles an hour, 2 times faster than that of a Category 5 hurricane wind. Albeit these winds were not sustained, they were gusts, but you can still imagine the force. And hauntingly and menacingly, it moved slowly, at a deliberate pace of 5 to 10 miles per hour, almost as if it wanted to make sure that it fully destroyed everything that it touched. It moved so slow that some of the homes were swallowed for a whopping 3 entire minutes before it moved on to the next. Fields and pastures that the tornado passed through weren't saved from the destruction either. The ground was scored up to 18 inches deep along its path, tearing trees and grass and soil directly off the top layer. Vehicles were found in these fields up to half a mile away, flattened like a tin can. 10% of all the homes in Jarrell were obliterated, and 27 out of that specific neighborhood's 131 residents were dead. The Double Creeks Estates neighborhood had 131 people living in 38 single-family homes, meaning that 90% of the homes were completely obliterated by this tornado, and 20% of everybody in the neighborhood lost their lives. And in some very sad and horrifying cases, even entire families were lost. All 5 members of the Ego family, all 4 members of the Moring family, and all 3 members of the Smith family were gone. The Dead Man Walking spared no and showed no favorites. Investigators would find remains of humans at 30 different locations, and the remains were so mangled and misfigured that they had been difficult to distinguish human remains from the animal remains. A horrifying statistic that's often overlooked in the case of the Jarrell tornado is its mortality rate. The tornado either ended your life or you didn't get affected by it, because virtually no one was injured, but 27 people didn't make it out alive. There was no in between. The Dead Man Walking did not take prisoners. Only a few places in the neighborhood had access to a shelter, as most of them were built on solid slabs of concrete. But there was one house that had a storm cellar where 9 people managed to take refuge and survive. Another resident in her family got in her bathtub and ended up 400 feet from her house in the middle of the road in the bathtub, alive but rattled. And the majority of the survivors in this neighborhood were on the outskirts of the tornado's radius. Those unfortunate enough to be in its path were never seen alive and whole again.